front there. tell him not to go home.
All you folks at home, we apologize for the slight time delay. We had some audio difficulty, but we'll go ahead and proceed with our program and still allow a full hour and a half for tonight's forum. We'd like to welcome everyone to the Burlington, West Burlington Area Chamber of Commerce, Des Moines County Supervisors Candidates Forum. My name is Jim Olson, President-elect of the Chamber, and I will be your moderator for this evening. The panelists for this evening are Jim Elmer from JDE Management Consultants and Dan Hockett from the Computer Company. Our timekeeper this evening is John Hart from Packaway. This event will be rebroadcast at 7 p.m. Wednesday, October 30th, and Thursday, October 31st on TCI Cable Channel 18. The forum will consist of at least 10 rounds of questions, to which each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. The order of response will be rotated so that all candidates have the opportunity to be the first to answer a question. Candidates have been placed on the stage in alphabetical order, and questions will begin with Doug Coyle, then Tim Hoshek, and then David Miller. Each candidate will have the opportunity to give a 2-minute opening statement stating their background and their reason for running for office. And at the conclusion of the forum this evening, each candidate will be allowed a 1-minute closing statement. At this time, I would like to start with Doug Coyle's opening statement.
Well, good evening, finally. And I want to thank the Chamber for having this forum tonight, and hopefully we'll inform the listening public of our positions. I'm Doug Coyle. I'm the taxpayers candidate for Des Moines County Supervisor. Why do I say taxpayers candidate? I believe the taxpayer can tell when their money is being spent unwisely. I believe the taxpayers can tell when their county is being mismanaged. And I believe the taxpayers know when they're hearing misleading answers to questions. Taxpayers need to take control of their money and at least put a taxpayer that knows the difference between building a reserve for the future and deficit spending. If you haven't heard, we've dug ourselves a big hole so far as the budget is concerned. Spend, spend, spend is the new motto of the county. My candidacy has been about solving the problem, not about ideas. My candidacy has been about leadership, not about following the same old path. Tonight, once again, you will have a chance to see the differences between the three candidates. November 5th, the taxpayers will have the opportunity to choose a leader or a follower. I thank you in advance for coming to listen or tuning in at home. My sincere hope is that you're given enough information to make an informed decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Next, we'll go with the opening statement from Tim Hoshek.
Thank you, Jim. Good evening, everyone. I'm running for re-election for a second term to serve as your county supervisor. I would like to thank the Chamber of Commerce for sponsoring this forum and the public for attending or tuning in on television. I'm a lifelong resident of Des Moines County, except for my military service and the time I spent at Utah State University earning a Bachelor of Science degree. My primary employment has been in the public sector. I have worked for the Iowa Department of Natural Resources, the Des Moines County Conservation Board, and also serving as the last 4 years as your county supervisor. During my 10 years as your supervisor, I have increased my knowledge regarding the inner workings of county government, and I believe we have a good government structure that is effective and provides a voice for the citizens of the county. While in office, I have been accessible to the people to discuss issues and concerns. I address those concerns at the county level and meet frequently with area legislators to promote representation at the state and the federal level. I have served on committees that promote community development, that promote community regional planning, child welfare, economic development, environmental concerns, mental health, emergency services, and natural resources conservation. I stand for honesty, integrity, and common sense. I make decisions based on facts and the best interests of the citizens. It has been an honor to serve on the Board of Supervisors. On Tuesday, November 5th, I need your vote so that I can continue working for you. Thank you for the opportunity to serve.
Thank you, Tim. Next, we'll hear David Miller's opening statement.
Thank you, Jim. First of all, I would like to thank the Burlington West Burlington Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event. As we open this forum tonight, I would like to share with you why I chose to run for Des Moines County Supervisor. That is communication, cooperation, and the ideals of fair representation, practical decision-making, and tactful diplomacy. As your supervisor, I will strive to build a link between government entities and bridge the gap between our rural and urban citizens with honest, conscientious communication. I want you to know that I do not profess to have all the right answers. However, with sincere, open dialogue, we can make informed decisions. Thank you for your support.
Thank you, David. At this time, we'll start our round of questioning. The first question will be from Jim Elmore and will be directed to Doug Coyle.
Doug, we understand DOT is not supporting the Highway 34 Beaverdale off-ramp. As a county representative, do you see any way this project could become feasible?
Well, in light of the county's budget predicament, the answer to that question has got to be short, no. The state is requiring us to put in a specific amount of money to make that happen. We're not prepared at this time to put a dollar towards that off-ramp, let alone $1.2 million that's probably going to take. The money is going to be prohibitive. We're in a deficit spending mode at the county. If elected to this office, I will be spending 99.9% of my time trying to fix the budget and trying to make sure we can fund the things that we're already spending money for. So unfortunately, we're not going to be able to spend any money for that on-off ramp at Beaverdale. That doesn't mean I don't support that on-off ramp. I do support it, but just unable to support it with money after what I found in the budget.
DOT is not supporting the 34 Beaverdale off-ramp. With an exit a mile and a half east of the proposed exit and the Middletown exit, the state feels it is not feasible to do this. I cannot and will not support a 34 Beaverdale off-ramp if it's going to cost local monies to do that. It would jeopardize future road projects for Des Moines County. We have met with West Burlington. We have met with the city of Burlington. I believe the chamber was there at this particular meeting. It was held, the mayor of West Burlington, Hans Trausel, called the meeting. And the idea of possibly purchasing some land on that particular area it could be feasible. The state is asking for local support to show an interest of the counties and the city of West Burlington to actually show the state, which I've repeated myself on that one, but to show the state that we are interested in a 34 Beaverdale exchange. It will help economic development out there. That will provide for additional traffic to that area. We just overlaid Beaverdale Road, and so basically that's where I stand on it at the present. Until we get further from the state on this, then we won't be able to afford $1.2 million, which would cost at local monies to pay for that particular off-ramp.
Thank you. David?
In response to the question, I would be inclined to agree with Mr. Coyle that right now, financially, we would be strapped to pay any part of the $1.2 million required. However, in researching the issue and being present at some of the meetings, I can see the viability for economic development for the area at that intersection, even versus the bypass or the overpass, which Iowa Department of Transportation has already provided just east of that, about 1.25 miles. They will and have encouraged, however, us to request that they put in place in the construction, in the engineering and design currently, the option of adding a future ramp there. And we can secure, not necessarily purchase the ground, but lock in the ground necessary for that exchange under present Iowa law. And I think it would be appropriate that we at least push forward with that request the engineering department to at least build in the off-ramp in their design, if we can add it later. But I can foresee that that intersection is probably more viable than the 1 1.25 miles east. But again, the $1.2 million is just not available at this time.
Thank you.
This question will be directed at Supervisor Hochak. Should a task force be established that consists of city, county, and school representatives to study how services and tax dollars could best be spent between the three bodies?
Okay, we're doing that now with our DCAP project, which I was a leader. Department of Human Services had approached the Board of Supervisors with Henry, Louisa, and Des Moines County. I serve as chairman of that DCAP project. We are working regionally right now with the school districts, also cities and other counties on how to stretch the welfare dollars. We have invited business leaders and school representatives, law enforcement, health, human service providers, and actually the general public to these meetings. Since it is already established, we could broaden that scope of that committee now. It's just a matter of those people showing up and being involved in this type of project. We have at times, and I have met with Burlington and the city of Burlington, also the school districts on our TIF policy. Well, it's not my TIF policy, it's actually the city of Burlington's policy, and how it affects local school districts when we tax increment finance some areas in the county. It does impact not only the school districts, but it impacts the county government as well. So I feel that they need to be involved in these meetings. These meetings are ongoing. We've been meeting for the last 2 years, and we're doing that regionally now. And so we anticipate things to come out for the better for the community as a whole. Thank you.
Mr. Miller?
From the time that I entered this race, one of the issues from my viewpoint is communication, cooperation, and improving governmental entities working together for a regional effort. There seems to be more and more people who are people and agencies and school systems and cities and counties that are vying for the same piece of the pie. The more we work together, the more we communicate, we can eliminate some duplication of services, save tax dollars, be more efficient, streamline our government. I would very strongly endorse the task force to work as a group, as a unit. I would favor it.
Mr. Clark?
Well, out of the three most important issues that I've talked about in this campaign, the third most important issue is improved communications between county and other taxing entities. There's two ahead of that, but that is an important issue to me. And we do need to establish that. The county takes in $31 million in property tax money, total property tax money. That's a lot of money. And we need to talk to each other, at least sit around the table and talk to each other about how we're going to spend that so we don't duplicate each other's efforts. We got to be careful not to get the cart in front of the horse at the county level, because we're duplicating so many efforts just at the county level that we need to take care of that business first. That's a little bit higher on the priority list. But all of these things can work in conjunction with one another, and I think, just very simply put, if you're spending $31 million of the taxpayers' money, then you need to be involved, and you need to provide a leadership position and go out and at least talk and see where we can help each other on all situations, not just a few of them.
This question for you, David. Do you believe that the Des Moines County Supervisor's job is a full-time or a part-time position?
The Des Moines County Supervisor's position by code is a part-time position, and I do not intend to make it a full-time position. I think that it's one that can be served well, served efficiently and effectively in an organized manner. And it's often been said, if you have a job that needs to be done, ask a busy person to do that job. And generally, they will do it. They will do it properly. So I do not think it's a full-time position.
Thank you. Doug?
Well, it's absolutely not a full-time position, either by code or any other means, by workload or anything else. We can make a full-time position out of anything we want to make it out of. It's pretty, you know, I happen to have a couple other full-time positions that I'm making room on to fulfill my duties at the county supervisor's level. We're not going to stop what we're doing, and life goes on. We're going to have to manage our time. We're going to have to work longer. We might have to work harder, but it's not a full-time position. It's at best a half-time position.
Thank you. Tim?
Thank you. Well, I believe it's up to the individual serving in this position. It's a full-time commitment for me. I serve on 12 to 13 committees. We have had supervisors in the past that are been on certain committees that obviously doesn't even show up to some meetings. I think you have to be active and involved, and you have to stay that way once you're elected by the people. I've had a good attendance record on all the committees that I've been on, and the ones that I've filled in for other supervisors. There are a total of over 30 committees which the supervisors, the three supervisors, must serve on. I don't think it's a requirement, but I guess if you're elected to this job, it's important that you stay involved in these committees because you learn a lot of information from the different entities that we serve with. Thank you.
This one will be directed to Doug first. Should the Des Moines County taxpayers pay the cost of health insurance for the supervisors?
Well, it's obviously put up to the vote of the board. We've flip-flopped on that issue depending on who's on the board. I personally pay for my own health insurance today. If elected, I plan on paying for my own health insurance then. I don't think anything's changed. If you're asking me, and you are asking me a question whether I think the board should pay for it, the answer to that question is no. I think that because it's a part-time position, I don't think the law requires that we fall under the contract where we're paying for an employee's health insurance. I think that was voted on by the board, and I think it's about a $7,000 error on the board's part.
Tim?
Okay. All the other elected officials that we elect do receive health insurance. But I think it's up to the decision of each board member. We budgeted in this fiscal year, and ever since I've been there in 1993, we have budgeted for every supervisor to have health insurance. In 94, during the election of 94, it was basically taken away based on the outcome of that election. But we budgeted, say if Dave or Doug get elected to the board, they have that option. We budgeted for this year, so the money is still budgeted there. And if they choose to take it, that's their decision. But I've been told by several people that they'd like to see their elected officials stay healthy. And we do have a good health program, good wellness program going now. I'm an active member of the Y. However, I haven't been there for probably 8 months, and it's probably showing. But I think it's up to each individual board member as they get elected to decide to take that insurance. The option should be there if they feel that it's needed by their families. I take a single coverage, which amounts to about $2,000 a year that the taxpayers are paying for my health insurance. Thank you.
David?
Since the position's a part-time position, I think it's a difficult precedent that's been set for paying the health insurance for part-time positions. I would not encourage, nor would I be in favor of taxpayers paying for the health insurance for the supervisors. I am not opposed, however, to offering them to buy into the plan. and that might be a viable option. I think the matter of how much it costs is not as consequential as to the precedent set by what you're doing with part-time positions. The other elected officials are full-time individuals, and that's a little different situation. So, and that's the way it's written into the code. So, I would not favor it.
Okay, thank you. Tim, this will be addressed to you first. What is your position on increasing the size of the Des Moines County Board? And if in favor, how would you propose doing this?
Well, I think 3 board members are plenty. Number one, we have enough room in the boardroom, or our offices now. We have 3 desks in there, and I don't know where we'd have to stick 2 more people in that particular office. Some boards, I found out as I attend the Iowa State Association of Counties, I've talked to them about this, and they have went to 5, some of them have, and others have went from 5 back to 3. So if it was a ballot question, let the people decide on the issue itself to increase that size, but no matter what you do there, there's going to be an increase in cost to pay 2 more elected officials to serve on the Board of Supervisors. We know in Illinois they have 15 approximately, and I visited with some Illinois boards, and they said that it's tough to make a decision when you got 15 people compared to 3. So let it be a ballot question. If we're petitioned, I would be more than happy by law to put it on the ballot for people to vote on it, but to me it's a waste of taxpayers' money.
Thank you. David?
Well, it would have to be put on the ballot if it's so petitioned, obviously. And as far as going to a 5-member board, I know that Knox County in Illinois has 25 members, and I don't think that's a good plan either. 5 members I would have no problem with. Sometimes more heads are better than one. And to give some vision and thought process for our future Des Moines County, we might just come up with some better ideas. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I would propose that if they did it, it would almost have to be based on either a population-based districting, and it could very well be effective. But I don't want you to believe that just because you have more, you have better. So I'm open to the idea, but just so that you don't think that you're going to get better representation just because you have more representatives. So it would have to be a population base, I would assume.
Thank you very much.
Well, the issue of districting kind of grabs me a little bit, I guess. I think the rural community honestly believe that they're not fairly represented on the Board of Supervisors. Unfortunately, the population base is in Burlington, and it's hard for a rural person to gather those votes to make the primary or win an election. I think districting may be a viable solution because I do think the rural community needs better representation. But I'm not so sure that reducing the supervisor's pay by at least $10,000 a year and hiring a $30,000 manager isn't a better way to go. I mean, you can talk about both of those issues and what serves the people better. And I think a long-term manager may serve the people better than a short-term supervisor. Now, that's just a thought, but I plan on getting with the Farm Bureau, if elected, and talking very seriously about this districting and seeing where that leads us.
Thank you.
Next question will be directed at David. Doug had just mentioned a little bit about this. What is your position in regards to hiring a professional county administrator?
At this time, I think, in my opinion, it's premature. I'm not saying that sometime it wouldn't be important. County supervisors are dealing with a rather large budget, and that figure is sizable when you're dealing roughly $16 million. That's a lot more than I go through in a day's time or in a year's time. So it's an important issue. But at the same time, I think it should be clear that the Board of Supervisors are not micromanaging the rest of the courthouse, and that it's the responsibility of the professionals in the recorder's office, the treasurer's office, the auditor's office, and so on and so forth, to run their portion of the budget. So I'm not sure that it's appropriate for us to assume that, again, that a professional manager is the first line response to our budget woes. We do have some budget problems, and I think the supervisors can deal with that with some good vision, leadership, and dialogue. So professional manager is not necessarily what I would recommend at this point in time.
Thank you. Doug?
I touched on that briefly. I'm not so sure that I'm recommending that, but I am saying for sure that a professional manager would certainly add consistency over the years. And I think that's what $15 million of taxpayer money that's what needs to happen to that. We need to have some consistency when dealing with that budget. It's far, far, far too political now. I mean, we see 3-1 votes all the time, regardless of where you're at. So I'm open to that idea. Do I think it's going to happen? Probably not for a while. Probably not for a long while. But I, for one, would be in favor of looking at the issue and seeing if it would work out. I would even not use my desk in the county supervisor's office and let a manager have that.
Thank you. Tim?
Okay. Well, David alluded to it earlier that we do have county administrators now and the elected officials that you people elect and I elect and to these positions. The auditor, treasurer, recorder, the administrators of the health board, the administrator of mental health, CPC administrator, the Veterans Affairs, the county attorney, chief law enforcement officer. These are all good administrators. Conservation. We're the ultimate purse strings to allow these county operations to function. And they've done a tremendous job the 4 years I've been there. And sure, I've bumped into a few with Democrats, Republicans alike. But good government, I think, is to work together to hash out our differences, whether it be in public, whether it be at each office. That's what we're there for. We're public officials, and we can't forget that once we're into those offices that we need to be more open. I think we've done that in the last 2 years as chairman. And so as far as the county manager, no, I don't think we need a county manager. We have those now in place, and that's what we're elected to do, is to manage. So, and not micromanage, but kind of help them out a little bit.
Thank you.
Doug, this question will be addressed to you first. Should the county have a zoning plan?
Yes. I believe that the county should have a zoning plan, and I think the county is working on that plan right now. It specifically is going to deal with the 2-mile zoning area. Zoning can be a good issue and a bad issue, depending on what side of the issue you're going to be on. But I think as a county supervisor, we're going to have to, this is going to be a moot issue probably by the time either one of me or David probably gets on the board, but because those decisions are already going to be made, we've got a committee studying that. It's been out there for close to 9 months now, and they're very quickly coming to a resolution of their committee, and they're going to give some suggestions to the County Board of Supervisors, and I suspect that they're going to act on them before the first of the year. And I think that our zoning in the 2-mile area is going to probably mirror the zoning in the city. I don't think we should be more stringent. I don't think we should try to reinvent the wheel. I think we should take the advice of the committee and go from there. I think far too often we form committees, we let them work for 9 months, we listen to what they got to say, we've already made up our mind what we're going to do, and we don't do what the committee said. I think we should let that committee work, do their job, and take everything that they tell us under advisement.
Thank you. Tim?
Is this for countywide zoning or just the 2 mile?
The question deals with county zoning.
Okay. Well, I'll try to talk on both issues here.
And I would appreciate if you would, because there's two issues here. One of them is, if the shoe fits, should it fit the whole county, or should it just be the part that the city is threatened to
Okay.
zone? And I'm sorry,
Doug?
Doug, that I didn't let you into that.
I'll answer it sometime.
Okay. Doug has alluded that, and he said that we have been working on a comprehensive plan. They're doing an excellent job of doing and putting that plan together. We've appointed a 15-member task force committee. They've been working very hard over the last several months. And we also have a special committee set up that is studying the 2 mile ordinance. And in fact, that will come before us after we approve the comprehensive land use plan. If you talk about countywide zoning, over the years, it's been shut down by the rural unincorporated areas. They felt that they didn't want big government coming out to the rural areas to tell them what they can and cannot do. As we see the county develop with Rathbun Rural Water, I think we're seeing more and more people wanting to move away from the city, get out into the open country, but make sure you have a good gravel road before you build, at least a 40-footer, because we're graveling those now. But there's a lot of issues here as far as the hog confinement, the issues that we're seeing develop in the northeast, northwest part of Iowa. We're watching that very closely. We established agricultural areas in the county, up in the Danville area when Mr. Ritter and Mr. Elmore were on the board at the time. And also, we also established some agricultural areas in the northeast part of the county also. So it'll all come together here at the end of the month, next month, and beginning of the first of the year, we'll be able to pass that, take care of those people out there.
Thank you. David?
Well, as been stated before, it's probably going to be a moot issue on the 2 mile zoning for the county. And I've been led to believe that, and I think that that's true. I think by the first of the year, the County Board of Supervisors will have adopted a 2 mile zoning. I think that it's unfortunate that the city has held the county's feet to the fire on the issue. It's probably an issue that should have been dealt with prior, but that's neither here nor there. I'm glad that it's going to be dealt with now. Countywide zoning as a whole, I think their issues have been mentioned and are various and numerous, whether it be livestock operations or whether it be developments. I think that they could probably be dealt with best by appropriate ordinances. I don't know that we need to be out there zoning agricultural land at this point in time. I'm sure that it would not be readily embraced by the population in the rural areas. And so I don't think that it's going to be an issue that will be dealt with soon. If the ordinances are allowed to work, again with the livestock, for example, livestock operations, we do have some legislation passed down from the state that defines the setbacks, for example, and the variances for what they have to do with their confinements, for example. So I think if we allow that an opportunity to work, we may not have to get into the zoning issue in the rural areas at this point in time. But I do think we need to pursue the 2 mile zoning as quickly as we can.
Thank you, David. Doug, I want to bend the rules just a little bit and let you respond to the county partner, because I take responsibility for poorly phrasing that question.
Well, I happened to be in Minneapolis about 7 o'clock the other morning drinking coffee with a group of folks that normally don't work in the rain. And we had an opportunity to talk about the county zoning issue, and it is a big problem. And we talked in length about a farmer that had built a brand new house, and another farmer that owned the ground across the street kind of jokingly threatened that he was going to put a big hog confinement across there. How would he like that? And I thought there for a minute we were going to have fireworks all over the place, but it's a big issue, and I think somewhere down the road, and somewhere probably fairly soon, we're going to have to look at some kind of zoning, because we're going to have some instances out there where people just aren't getting along because there's no rules to play by. And I think we're better off sometimes when we got some guidelines to play by. And that's what zoning gives us, some guidelines that we can play by.
Okay, thank you very much.
Next question will be directed to Tim. Would you support unified law enforcement for Des Moines County?
Well, not at the present time, because I think we're doing that now. We've got the Southeast Iowa Narcotics Task Force, Child Trauma Team, Truancy Task Force, Bad Checks Program for merchants, the Des Moines County Victim Witness Program, Child Support Recovery. Our patrol officers right now help out West Burlington, Danville, and the Burlington Police Department. I guess I'd support it if it was run totally by the Board of Supervisors. At some point it might be feasible, but given the current situation with our new jail, we have remodeled the Burlington Police Department, we've remodeled the Sheriff's Office. To me, I think put it all under one roof that was approached back in the mid-'80s when they tried to build a jail south of the courthouse. That didn't fly then either. The other thing I wanted to mention was that we are prosecuting the city charges now. We're handling that based on their decriminalization of the code. So I believe we are moving in that direction. But right now it's been a positive direction, because law enforcement are working together very well in this county and in southeast Iowa. So to put it all under one roof, we did move the county attorney up on the 3rd floor of the police department because of the video courtroom that was needed, and my time is up.
David?
In my opening statement, I said that I would strive to improve the communication between government entities. I've also stated before that I think if you work as a team, and you are team players, that you're more effective in what you do. I think it's important that we make every effort to bring the groups together if possible. I know that and I don't think it's anything foreign or strange to the people in this area that the Burlington Police Department and the Sheriff's Department do not necessarily work as well as they could together, even though there has been some effective law enforcement and there is cases of joint leadership in working on some of the task force. But I think it would be far more appropriate that we open those channels of communication and see if we can improve what's out there. We have 2 excellent departments, and we need to work as a team. So whether that means unified law enforcement, I certainly think we need to research and find out what's wrong, and if it's broke, fix it. Thank you.
Doug?
Well, unified law enforcement sounds good, but I think communities sometimes lose their identity when we start putting things together, and that makes citizens kind of uneasy when they start losing their identity, because they're very proud of who they are. We're West Burlington, we're Mediapolis, we're Danville, and that doesn't mean that a unified law enforcement idea is not a good one. It just means you got to work it very carefully. Now, I thought at one time, I happened to be on one of the committees that were looking at the jail, and I thought at one time that might be a golden opportunity for us. But I found out very quickly when you get into one room with 3 or 4 different cities talking to one another in the county, we didn't get anything done but holler at each other. So So, the county had to make a decision. So everybody got very defensive on what they wanted to do. So if we could break down those communication barriers, I would be in favor of unified law enforcement, but it's got to be done in a very specific way. We can't lose our identity in the community.
Thank you.
David, what is your position on the county participating in the Regional Airport Authority?
As far as the airport authority issue goes, I do not support use of property tax, ag land tax for the use of the airport or joining the airport authority or funding. The concept, again, is part of a regional effort. And as I've said before, I think a regional effort to maintain what you have as far as assets, your programs, is important. And it's an asset that's an asset to the community. And I know a lot of people feel that they don't use the airport, so why should they pay for it? And those who use it should pay for it. And yet at the same time, and hopefully none of us are going to be affected by it, but we don't all use the fire department either, and we hope that we don't have to. And yet we all pay for it. That may not be an apples-to-apples comparison, but I think it's an analogy that can be used. And I think it's important that we view the airport authority as just doing one more thing that we can do to maintain a viable economic development asset of our area. Not just Burlington, not just Des Moines County, but the entire area. So again, I think that it would have to be properly posed and properly funded before I would encourage the county going forward with joining the airport authority. And I don't see that happening soon either. Thank you.
Well, I happen to serve on that committee for 9 months, and I happen to believe that the airport authority is a good idea. There's a lot of reasons it's a good idea, but I'm not going to go into those, but it's just a good idea. I happen not to believe that paying for it with tax dollars is a good idea, with an increased taxation on the county. And I had an opportunity to talk to a group of farmers one night in Mediapolis again, and they asked me that very same question. And I give them that answer. It's a good idea. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to tell you I don't think it's a good idea. It is a good idea. But I don't think it should be paid for by an increase in your taxes. I think we need to find another way to pay for that. Now, but in lieu of the fact, again, and I keep going back to this, in lieu of the fact, again, of our disastrous budget problems, there's no way that the county can participate any way monetarily in an airport authority. If we didn't have the budget crisis that we were having right now, today, it might be another situation, but it's really out of the question. The money is really out of the question until we get it squared away.
Thank you. Tim?
Okay, thank you. I'm glad to see both candidates agree that what the board had done prior, they agree with it. I believe the approach taken by the Airport Study Committee did not include all of Des Moines County. It was pretty obvious. Middletown, Mediapolis, and Danville governments are all a part of this county also. Doug is right. We do not have the resources available to come up with the probably the $60,000 that it would have cost to join that authority. In the next 4 years, I'd like to see how this authority is going to work. Now that's the key right there. We've got another arm of government sitting out there like our Solid Waste Commission, and what's that done to the people of the city of Burlington? Okay? I don't think I need to say any more on that with the bag and tag. Maybe when the sales tax comes up for a vote again in 5 years, the year 2000, maybe we can allocate some of that sales tax money. But let's ask the people. Let's ask the unincorporated areas, do you want to join the airport authority and put 10% of your sales tax money into an airport authority? Now what Burlington did and West Burlington did, and Mr. Coyle, I believe you were on the council at that time, they went ahead and imposed and went ahead and joined this airport authority. They were elected. I don't know whether the issue was up during your campaign, but it was up in '92 in my campaign, and I said no to it. It's up here again in 96. Well, it was up early 96, and I voted not to join it at that time also. I'm not going to put it on property tax. I think it's an unfair to the farmer who has more land. And my time's up.
Thank you.
Doug, the next question is directed for you. Should the county commit the necessary resources to develop a long-range strategic plan?
Before I answer that question, Dan, I want to clarify one thing to Tim. I didn't agree with you, so I don't want to go on record saying I did. The answer to that question is that is my number one issue in the county. We do absolutely no planning. We are a reactionary government. We are not proactive. And we need to develop some strategic planning for the county so that we can get on with the business of leading the county into the 20th century here. We have never in the history of the county that anyone can remember had a planning session with department heads, key employees, other elected officials, and trustees of the county. We need to do that. If it takes hiring an outsider to moderate that group, we need to do that too, because we need to come up with some short-term and long-range plans for this county so we know where we're going. One department in this county doesn't know what the other department is doing. A perfect example of that is at the county attorney's office. They've got a set of software for their computer. At the sheriff's office, they got exactly the same set of software on their computer. Other offices got exactly the same set of software. There's no reason for the county in 3 different budget areas to spend exactly the same amount of money on the same set of software. That's ridiculous. We're not even talking to one another. I've heard a lot of in the past 3 weeks, well, we're doing that. We've done that. It's okay. We've done a fine job. We rate ourselves a 10. Well, that's malarkey. It just is. We're not doing the job. We don't even know what job's being done half the time. That's the fact.
Thank you. Tim?
Okay. We are doing some planning. The computer, we budgeted this year. We're spending $60,000 on new computers. And Mr. Coyle had mentioned about the attorney. Those files in that computer system is basically confidential. We don't want all our other department heads, elected officials, or even the employees to have access to his files. That's law enforcement. But I believe it would be in the county's best interest to have a strategic plan. It is important to be proactive rather than reactive. The county does not have the financial resources at this time, but we have had our own people, but we do have our own people as resources, and that's important. We have a tremendous amount of knowledge in the form of elected officials and their employees. The investment of their time and their expertise in the development of a plan will be the resource we could commit at this present time. These are the people that work and live in the county. A combination of public input and employees' input would be my preference at this time. To improve communication between each department, I believe the first step would be to begin monthly meetings with the department heads and elected officials. Now, we've done that on a small scale. We do that at budget time, and we do that with the computers as we are networking. Over a next 5-year period, we will be networking a majority of our computer system into one. So we're working on that, but it takes time, but most of all, it takes your money.
Thank you. David?
First of all, the response to the question would be, I think it could be money well spent. If we can find the money, and I don't think it would be that costly, I think it's important that we do proceed with some strategic planning. Making purchases for the future and budgeting for those purchases can be important. It can be beneficial and helpful to running the offices of the courthouse and the county government. But strategic planning, I think, is far more than that. We have to look at our vision. We need to come up with some creative ideas for what we're going to be able to foresee the future of Des Moines County. See whether that vision includes increased economic development. See if that vision includes a safer environment and quality of life. So there's a lot of issues that are involved there, and I think that those brainstorming sessions, and if we need someone to moderate or lead that with the expertise to pull those issues and ideas out, then maybe we need to do that. And I think that's important that it be done occasionally and upgrade that. So I think it's a practical means to see if we can improve our vision, and I think that the county needs that vision, and I also feel that it's long past due. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to have these people telling the county how to run their business. It's the county establishing their own vision for their own future. And so I think it would be a viable tool to use in strategic planning and helping ourselves look to our future as our lives in Des Moines County.
This question would be directed to you, Tim, first, and it's a question from the floor. What do you feel is the most effective way to promote economic development in Des Moines County?
The most effective way to promote economic development is to work with the Burlington Area Development Corporation, the Chamber of Commerce, such as yourselves, involve the general public. I serve on the Southeast Iowa Development Board, which is made up, it's an arm of the Southeast Iowa Regional Planning Board Commission. I serve as treasurer of that, and we're actively involved with grants, CDBG grants, and with the revolving loan fund, which there is approximately $614,000 available to local businesses, only in Lee and Des Moines County. Henry County decided not to put some dollars into that. I think Louisa County is looking at it now to jump into this revolving loan fund. Revolving loan fund is made up of bankers in both Lee and Des Moines County. They do an excellent job reviewing these business prospects, and then eventually it comes to the full board, the executive board, and also the full board of Southeast Iowa Regional Planning Commission. It's important to stay active and apply for the grants, go to Des Moines, lobby legislators, the people that make the rules and regulations that we have to abide by. I've promoted Des Moines County as much as I can on the 34 Coalition. I've been involved in a couple of hog roasts. I know the Chamber's done an excellent job moving forward with the 34 Coalition. Just staying active in all of the different aspects. I just attended a Tri-State Economic Summit in Canton, Missouri. It's the first one, and there'll be another one next year that I'll be going to, I hope.
Thank you. David?
And the question, if I recall, is what's the most effective way to deal with economic development? And if that's the answer, it's to have a large...
To promote economic
development is to have a large bankroll so you can give the prospect whatever they want to land them here. But I don't think that's practical or feasible either. But I think it's very important for economic development that you show those prospects when they come to visit our area, if they're considering location here, that you have a good mix of public and private in an effort to encourage them, to show them that you have a quality community. Now that means, again, communication, listen to their needs, see what you can do to meet their needs. Don't give them the farm, but be there, travel with them, go with the prospects so that you're on a name basis, so that you recognize them, they recognize you. So if they do a follow-up or if you do a follow-up, they can put a name with a face. That doesn't cost a lot of money. It takes a little time. And I think that can be very effective. If you show them that you want them, that's probably the most effective way to promote economic development.
Thank you. Bill?
Well, I agree in part. The number one thing we can do in this county is a unified effort of all taxing entities and the business community to encourage economic development. BADCO earlier this month, on the 24th of October, happened to have their annual program of work, where all these taxing entities came together, the members of the board, and they strategically planned their work for the following year. No county representation there. Now that's unfortunate. The county talks about good economic development, but oftentimes they're not present at the only board in town, the BADCO board. It's Burlington Area Development Corporation. Oftentimes they're not present. I brought that to Tim's attention the other day, and he said, well, I'll make sure one of us are there from now on. And I happen to have been on there for a year now and haven't missed a meeting. And again, the most important meeting of the year happened to be on the night we were having the Burlington Professional Women's Forum, so I couldn't be there. And the mayor who appointed me to that board went in my place, but there was no county representation. Now, how can we show a unified front on economic development when some of us aren't at the table? That's the most important thing we can do.
Okay, thank you.
This question will be first directed at David. Who currently decides which county roads get paved? Is it the supervisors or perhaps the county engineer? And in your opinion, who should decide?
Well, the board's purpose is to set policy and give direction to the county engineer, but the county engineer obviously has a major input on which roads are paved. Now, I think that's based on more than just a decision of the board or the county engineer. It should be based on needs in the community, and in this case, in the rural community. So it would have been a lot easier to answer that question if we'd had more money for our roads, but with the budget situations now, it's going to be difficult to increase the number of paved roads in the rural areas. So again, coming back to the budget, if we could increase that with the sales tax revenues, for example, we'd be able to do more favorable projects such as paving more of the roads. I think in answer to the question, the nuts and bolts of it are, though, I think it's policy is set by the supervisors under the direction of the county engineer, and then the county engineers to fulfill those obligations.
Thank you. Doug?
Well, I'm not sure who's making the decision now. If your question is who should make the decision, I think the ultimate decision to spend the money comes back to the Board of Supervisors. But I think the strategic planning process starts with the county engineer. Even farther down than that, I think it probably starts with the rural taxpayer, and then comes up through the county engineer, and then comes to the board eventually. And I think that should be the normal progression of things. I don't think the county supervisor should be down trying to micromanage the county engineer's office. We pay him a lot of money. If he can't do the job, let's get us another county engineer. That's pretty simple in my mind. But he certainly should be making the recommendation and discussing the logic behind those recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. We're the ones that provide the money.
Thank you. Tim?
Well, the county engineer does work for the Board of Supervisors. There's no doubt about that. We're the ones that hired him, and we can fire him. He presents a 5-year road plan to the board every budget year. And we have usually a night meeting so we can accommodate the rural representation or anybody that's interested in a 5-year road plan. We usually make sure that meeting will be at night, and so we've taken care of that. It is his recommendation based on his knowledge of the conditions of the roads. The board makes the final decisions on road construction projects. The current system is fine as long as the engineer is open and honest with the county board, and I believe Mr. George is. I think over the last 5 years since he came on, he's done a good job for the county. There are some things I think he was pressured when in 1992, I believe it was, he felt he was pressured on the South Prairie Grove Road. I'll name that road, for instance. It was on the 5-year road plan. We voted for it to have it repaved. However, that was one of the critical mistakes that the board made in that particular instance. And I'll be upfront and honest with you, and that was a mistake. That road should have never been paved. We've got roads out there that were built 10 years ago, and they're crumbling today, and because of poor engineering design. You have to have good drainage. You have to have a good road base before you even think about paving a road. So in this case, on South Prairie Grove Road, there was a bridge which was a one-lane bridge. It had school buses were being forced to turn around. It's time to fix the culvert, the bridge itself first, and the safety of the children, which is important to me and I think all the other people in this county, to get them safely across and not, happen to fall prone to some bridge that just kind of let go under the weight of that bus. So that was my biggest concern.
Thank you.
This question's for you, Doug, first. If you were required or felt the need to reduce the overall budget by 5%, how would you do it? Be specific concerning the areas for cuts or how you'd attack the problem.
Well, there are several areas in the budget that need looked at. Mental health end of the budget needs looked at. We're no longer required to have the facility on Washington Road. I think we've got to look very closely in cutting that. That saves our budget in the neighborhood of $500,000 a year. I know that's over 5%, but I'll keep going. We also need to look at the areas in the budget. There's just been some things, if we just got some consistency in the budget, and what I'm talking about here is some consistent decision-making in the budget, we would be much better off. I mean, 2 years ago, 1994 budget I looked at, we spent $25,000 on legal fees. Couldn't figure out what we spent $25,000 on legal fees for, and so I started asking questions about that. And what happened is a supervisor had recommended the dismissal of an employee, and it went on and on and on, and finally, on a 3-2 vote, some months later, we paid that employee $39,000 in back pay. And in the meantime, we spent $25,000 on legal fees. Now, I don't know the employee, and I don't know all the circumstances, and I'm not commenting on that. I'm just saying if you start a legal process, then you should follow the advice of your attorney and go through with the legal process. You've already spent the money. Instead, now, we spent some $64,000 on that employee. So there's another $64,000 unbudgeted expenditure in the budget that could have been saved if we would have thought about it. So a lot of things, a lot of inconsistencies in the budget, and we got to be consistent with our spending and our decision making, and that's the problem with the budget today. Everybody comes in for money, and we're handing out money like it. Of course, when it's not your money, it's easy.
Thank you. Tim?
Well, we look at the budgets every year. In fact, in December, we'll be taking a look at them for fiscal year 97 and 98. What we do is have public or budget hearings with the department heads and elected officials. We line them up, and we go through the budget line by line, and we get down to a bottom dollar. Basically, we do some cutting in certain budgets where we feel that it's not needed. We could cut a car, for instance, out of the sheriff's budget. That's save $14,000. Or we could reduce the attorneys. There's certain budgets that we can reduce by 5%. In fact, I think we do that anyway. One of the important things that we have to do is to maintain a level of service that people expect out there. And to go in there and just start slashing everything up and not providing good service to the people that they pay their taxes are expected, just like school teachers. You pay your school taxes. You expect good students. You expect good teachers to teach those students. And you wouldn't want to undercut a teacher's salary. I know I wouldn't. And I don't expect to undercut my own employees, especially on their salaries. But there are some fluff in the budget, and we did tighten down the budget in 1995-96 when I took over as chairman, and that may have caused too much property tax relief, but we'll work through that, and at least I've been open and honest on what we've done, and we have no reserves, and so that's all I've got to say about that.
Thank you. David?
Well, the budget as it stands now is without reserves, as Tim had mentioned, and it's a pretty tight budget. There's very little fluff in it, but the question is, what would I do if I wanted to cut the budget by 5%? I would probably go to each department head, each section of the budget, and ask them to cut theirs by 5%. Now, Doug had mentioned the county home. You know, the county is no longer required to have that. That is a large bill, roughly $500,000 or a little over that. If you didn't want to offend or were not concerned with abandoning the county residents, that would be a quick way to do it. But I don't think that's the right way to do it, and we can't abandon them. I think we have to provide services where necessary. But there is means to do that, and probably the most equitable way, as I said, was to just go to each department and say, we need 5% out of your budget. Where can it come from?
Thank you.
The next question will be directed at Tim first. Should the county participate in the development and funding of the proposed sports complex?
As far as funding, I think we can do some in-kind funding based on maybe some tree plantings, maybe a little bit of dirt moving. We've got two excellent representatives now on that committee that's studying that sports complex. I want to see it become a reality myself also. The city of Burlington has committed some dollars to it. I believe West Burlington and Burlington are also doing a little bit of land swapping out there with the Burlington Area Development Corporation involved in that process. But we have an excellent person in Mr. Wagner. He can develop those fields and be able to design the fields based on his expertise over the years as working with the Burlington Community School District. I basically cannot see putting any county funding in it. I think we can do some in-kind contributions when our people can be available for that, but we have to be careful on doing that. We're doing that at Community Field in some respects because it's a community-wide effort, and I'd be willing to help out in that respect, to give some in-kind contributions to that project. And I hope Burlington and West Burlington can come together and can make this a viable sports complex for all the people of the county and actually the tri-state area. But as far as spending some tax money on that, I can't see us putting money into that.
Thank you. David?
I think it's desperately needed for the area. I think it's important that we have the sports complex. Should the county be involved in the development of the complex? Yes, they should. I think the county is going to have to be very creative in how they're involved. And we have too much of a financial burden at this point in time to commit large dollars spent on that out of county funds. They're just not there. I do feel, though, that it's important that we foresee that as a future for Des Moines County to be part of it. And as I've said before, if you put on a regional face, you know that you're going forward with this as government entities are all speaking out of the same page, then it's going to be more effective. It's going to be more of a doable item, and I think it's important that we have that. Our youth and our community, we need that. And I think that's part of the quality of life. That's one more thing that can be a benefit in economic development.
Thank you. Doug?
Well, I think in-kind contributions are using tax money. I think we're paying the individual that's out there working tax dollars. So I think we can use some tax money to help that facility, either in-kind or whatever, but in-kind is tax money. Unfortunately, just to do something out of our ordinary budget is not possible. The figure we're working with is we're deficit spending the rate of $647,000 a year right now. That's a big number. And we've got to correct that. But that doesn't mean that we cannot act as a unified partner in the county. That doesn't mean that we stand up every time somebody says something to us and say, we can't do that, we don't have no money. That means we participate in a positive manner until we do have money. And in-kind services is the same as getting in your back pocket and doling out tax money. It's exactly the same. It just doesn't hurt as much. That's kind of when someone asked me if one of my employees can go across the street and help them out. Sure, go ahead. I'm still paying that employee. It costs me the same amount out of my payroll. That's the way it is. So it's tax dollars. And yes, we can do that.
Thank you.
David, you'll be first with this one. Should the Office of Supervisors be nonpartisan?
Well, I said earlier in my campaign that I think the decision-making should be a nonpartisan decision, and it should be based on what's best for the people, not for the party. However, I understand the importance of grassroots in our political system in the United States, that we do need some basis for which to develop the candidacy of higher offices. So I think I've clarified my position in the answer, so it's kind of a twofold or a loaded question. But I hope that it's clear that I think the decision should be a nonpartisan decision, but I can't understand the rationale for having a partisan election for the seat.
Thank you. Doug?
Well, that rationale, I think, is very simple. You know, it doesn't have anything to do with how much money you handle. Look at Burlington's budget. I don't think anybody on that Burlington City Council ran as a Democrat or a Republican. They ran for the City Council. Look at West Burlington's budget. I don't think anybody on that West Burlington City Council ran as a Republican or a Democrat. They ran as the person running for an office. Same as with the school boards. And I sincerely believe that when we get down to grassroots, where we can virtually see our tax dollars being spent, we need to take party out of the picture, and we need to start electing people that are qualified to do the job. Not people that need a job, but people that are qualified to do the job. There's a difference.
Thank you. Tim?
Well, until the law changes, we're going to be required to declare a party one way or the other, whether you're Republican, Democrat, or Independent. When I took office in 1993, I've treated all the people the same. I don't ask them when they come into the office whether they're Democrat or Republican or Independent. In fact, I ask them, how can we help you? And basically, I know I've heard in this campaign there was a lot of 2-to-1 votes. Well, that kind of was blown out of proportion, I think, by the media in the fact that basically it was based on the jail. When I ran in 1992, it was pretty upfront that we need to fix the jail that we had. Either that or if Mr. Ritter and Mr. Elmore would have wanted to expand the courthouse on the south end, maybe I would have went for that. But obviously we have a jail now that's sitting out in the middle of nowhere, and we have to live with it. So just because it 2-to-1 votes or partisan or nonpartisan, that isn't when I make my decisions. My decisions are made based on the facts and based on what is best for the people of this county. And if I don't like an issue, then I've been fairly upfront on how I feel about the issue, and usually that's the way it goes.
Thank you.
Next question, we'll start off with Doug. Do you feel gaming has had a positive or negative influence on Des Moines County?
Well, on the county as a whole, I think gaming has had a positive effect. And that's to say that the boat contributes in the neighborhood of $300,000 to Burlington area development, and that money is in turn used very wisely in the community. If your question was, has the boat contributed positively towards business, then my answer would be different. I don't know that we've done that. The boat was brought here for tourism, and it would help the economic development of the community. In one turn, with money, it has. But from a business person's standpoint, I very rarely have somebody from the boat come in and eat at my restaurant. So there's kind of a mixed bag of reaction there. I don't think the boat is all bad, but I sure don't think it's all good. But it's kind of like kids. You don't want to get rid of them now.
Thank you. Tim? Okay. It has, I believe it has both a positive and a negative impact. The positive impact is that we're gaining revenue from it for the boat's operation in Des Moines County. It brings jobs to the area. It brings tourists to our area, which means an increase in food sales and retail and hotels, et cetera, et cetera. The negative end of it, it brings social problems. Gamblers' addictions, when they spend the money on the boat instead of providing for their family's needs. It causes domestic problems, which can result in problems with children at school and in the community. And also, I think we have to spend tax dollars locally for programs to help people with this type of addiction. That's about all I have to say about it. I think since the boat's been here, I got to ride on it when it came in. My folks are investors in it. They like it. They're not big gamblers, but they have a good time. It's family entertainment for them. So I think I'm glad to see it here. I just heard that we're going to be getting a new boat, a larger boat, and which is good news for southeast Iowa and for this whole tri-state area. So thank you.
Thank you. David?
The question is a little more complex than it was worded. And I think you're dealing with moral issues, financial issues, tourism issues, economic development issues, and social issues. And in response to that, I think I would list them as no, yes, yes, and yes/no. So if you have to weigh the yeses and weigh the nos, I wouldn't give it up either. But it's certainly not all positive.
Thank you.
Jim, what was the allowed time for the closing?
1 minute each.
Do we have time for one more question?
Well, we could do one more.
This question is from the floor, and it would be addressed to you first, Tim. How can past boards be accused of both padding the budget and causing the current deficit at the same time? Doesn't the current board hold some responsibility?
Well, the first 2 years I was on the board, I believe there was some padding going on in the budget when we spent $3.5 million outright to build a new correctional facility. There was no planning whatsoever. Sure, we can take $3.5 million of the jail or the reserve funds and build a new correctional facility, but they did not even consider the video courtroom that needed to be remodeled, where the old county attorney's office used to be. The video link monthly service charge was not planned for. The movement of the county attorney to the Burlington Police Department on the 3rd floor, never budgeted for monthly costs there, which was negotiated very nicely with the city of Burlington. They're charging us about $1,000 a month there, which we think is a good package. We pay our utilities, though. Basically, the commitments that the previous board had committed, the $200,000 loan to E911, the additional jail staff that was needed in 1995, we finally decided to commit to that. which all throughout the jail process, we can build it, we can run it with the amount of people we have upstairs. So I was believing all these things, and I believe I was misled, and I believe the taxpayers of this county were misled. So basically we're, besides the $200,000 concrete road out on the landfill road, you know, things were actually, they were spending a lot more money than I felt was necessary. But we'll recover from this, and it's going to take a couple years longer to get it back in line. My time's up.
Well, in reference to previous budgets, $3.5 million was found somewhat out of the blue when it came time to build the jail, and that's just more a matter of communication. And I don't think the boards, when we were in the process of studying the jail, I don't think the board was open and honest with the public as to what their funding level was. But that's neither here nor there at this point in time. Again, it's a moot issue. The jail was built, and because they committed to it, I'm glad that it was padded so that it was there for them to use. Once again, we're in a situation of a shortfall right now as far as rural services and funding those rural services due to some change or glitch in the funding formula for rural services based on the local option sales tax. So there is cash reserves being used to maintain our level of effort, minimum local effort, for the roads in Des Moines County so that we continue to get our state funding. So fortunately, there was some padding of the budget there so that we can use those reserves to handle that. So I think in a budgeting process, you should try to maintain a level of finances so that you can handle some of those unforeseen and unexpected circumstances. So to a certain extent, I think that it's important that we have that, but again, it should be an open communication. You should build in there so that you have some insights as to what you're going to have in the future with strategic planning, as I've said before, and let the public know that you are trying to raise that level so that you can be in a safe situation in the future.
Thank you. Doug?
Well, let me break this down a little bit simply. You know, if the average everyday person out here was saving $100 a month to buy a new car, and all of a sudden they had $10,000 in their savings account, they still needed a new car. So they took that $10,000 or $12,000, whatever they had, and they spent it for a new car. That doesn't have anything to do with saving $100 a month. Nothing at all. Same thing happened with the jail. We saved thousands of dollars a month until we had $3.5 million. We spent it. We paid for a new jail. That doesn't have anything to do with still saving hundreds of thousands of dollars. Tim hasn't saved anything in the last 4 years. He readily admits that. If you listen to the radio program, he readily admits that. But to hear Tim talk, you would think he's been doing all the right things. He's taking credit for all the good things. And it amazes me and saddens me to a degree that I've never heard him take credit for any of the bad things. It's sad when we're spending at the rate of $647,000 more a year than what we're bringing in. We're not going to take credit for that. That's somebody else's fault. So we're not going to fix it. It's a sad state. I would be remiss in letting the county feel like there's no solution to the problem. The solution to the problem, if I'm elected, is I will go try immediately to get an issue on the ballot to combine the sales tax so we can put it all into the rural services basic.
Okay, thank you. That's the time. Thank you, gentlemen. Jim?
Thank you. Yeah, at this time, we'd like to enable each of you to provide a closing statement of 1 minute. For all those voters that are still have yet to decide, this is an opportunity for you to encourage those why we should vote for each of you as candidates. And David, we'll start with your closing statement.
Thank you, Jim. And once again, I would like to thank the Chamber of Commerce for this opportunity to communicate with the voters. As your county supervisor, I would hope that you, the voters, would return the favor and share your concerns and ideas in a meaningful, open dialogue. It is clear that difficult decisions must be made and a vision for the future must be defined. I would like to be a part of that vision, and I am prepared to address those difficult decisions with your support. I'm asking for your vote on November 5th and your support as a county supervisor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Doug?
Well, thank you for having the forum. I decided to run for the Des Moines County Board of Supervisors because the board was struggling with so many issues. From leadership to communication to finance, business has not gone well with this board. On October 18th on the KCPS talk radio, the chairman admitted he had done nothing to create a reserve in the last 4 years. On October 24th, at the Professional Business Women's Forum, the chairman, when asked what happened to the reserves, he replied, "I spent them." Mr. Hoshek truly believes his performance has rated him a 10, when even the casual observer can tell things are not right. When we read quotes in the newspaper like, "I don't believe we're out of money." Next you hear, "Maybe we won't pay our bills for 30 days. And finally we read where the county has borrowed $775,000 to raised our taxes by 28 cents a thousand over the next 3 years. During the past few months, I've pointed out several problems with the budget. The largest of those problems can be found in the Rural Services account. We are currently spending at the rate of $647,000 in the deficit. Tonight I've offered some possible solutions. I believe it takes more sense, more common sense, and not more money. On November 5th, I hope you, the voter, are using more common sense.
Thank you, Doug. Tim?
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss the issues of importance to the county's citizens. Forums such as this are important. It allows the voters to obtain a clear picture of what each candidate stands for and how they will represent you. I have always been honest and upfront about where I stand on issues. I have proven I can make the difficult choices and stand up to the pressures of special interest groups. I understand the need for cooperation and communication in and between governments. I am willing to listen to all sides and compromise whenever possible. Teamwork and planning are essential, especially in times of dwindling resources. Decisions need to be made based on facts, consideration of long-term consequences, and fiscal realities. November 5th, you have the opportunity to let your voice be heard. A vote for Tim Hoshak is a vote for the responsible government. Thank you for the opportunity to serve the people of this county.
Thank you, Tim. That concludes this evening's forum. On behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, I want to thank each of the candidates for taking the time this evening. I'd like to thank our panelists, Jim and Dan, and our timekeeper, John Hart. I'd like to also thank our audience that came out here this evening and also those that are listening at home. I think that Des Moines County is very fortunate to have the quality of candidates we have running this year. I look forward to a good election. We encourage everyone to vote for their favorite candidate on Tuesday, November 5th. Thank you.
I don't know, it's a rewarding job. I think it's really rewarding. And, I don't mean to go on and on. The rest of you have things to say too, I'm sure.
You know, each one of us are 1/7 of the board. On our own, we are powerless. We have no power outside this board table at all. And so, and we're each individuals. We each have our individual opinions about issues. And that's fine. And if you're unsure about some topic that's out there, then you ask questions to better educate yourself so you can make the best decision, listening to everyone. But then once we come to this board table, all discussions are open, above board, and then decisions are made from there. Once the board votes on any issue and the majority rules, then it's up to each one of us to support that majority opinion. There's one spokesperson for the board, and that's the president. He is the designated spokesperson. So I hesitate talking to anyone, media type. I always refer it to the board president because it's
Open enrollment that I'd like the board to look at.
Janet, why don't you go ahead and read what the people are petitioning for?
We, the undersigned, as residents of the Burlington School District, feel that West Burlington School District students who would like to use Burlington Community School District athletic and/or academic programs are welcome to do so through the open enrollment process. Further, we feel a program of sharing is unfair, unwise, and of no benefit to our Burlington Community School District students.
Mrs. Sorensen, how many signatures do you have?
I didn't count them.
I thought you had them numbered. That's okay.
Well,
That's okay.
the first one, you might like to read who that is.
Okay. Thanks. Anybody else like to come up, please?
My name is Mike Cleese. I live at 1604 Summer. I have to think about that because we just moved yesterday. But I'd like to commend the board on, I'd like to commend Mr. Sparks on his comments that he made at the West Burlington joint board meeting. Mrs. Boyd, I'd like to commend you. It was really impressive. I really thought a lot of that. Mrs. Garwood, you too. And Joe, I was very impressed with you, your attentiveness, and listening. I hope it works out. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any public comment? All right, the first agenda item, regular agenda item, would be the informational reports. Superintendent Dr. Swanson.
Okay, I just have a few items of information for you. The Iowa Association School Board, as they felt their children were not receiving an appropriate education, to open and roll out, trying to force smaller districts to get together and possibly merge, since the legislature did not really want to tackle reorganization. And now we've seen things go another way with that. But the Burlington district will have a total, these 13 will bring kindergarten enrollees out next year for 30, so those people won't give the district a chance, and a total out for next year at 323. Now, all of those may not go out for various reasons, but we have to budget fairly close to that, and Dick was within how many thousand last year? $10,000 last year out of our 1.2 million. We do have some good news. Last year we only had 26 students who wanted to come into the district or who their parents wanted them to come in. Parental decision, of course. This year we're up to 41, so that number is better. But still our net is, we're losing approximately, depending upon how it all shakes out, 51 more out of the district. And then with our state aid requirements, it could be up to $1.2 million in property tax and state aid that will leave our district with the open enrollment. So we still are losing more than we would like. We have made some impact with the early childhood programs that we're doing. So those are the numbers.
So it's 51 more this year than over last, right?
Right. So we will share this with faculty in the various buildings and talk to teachers and principals and everyone again, and it's a group effort here. Again, the law is changed where convenience becomes basically an allowable reason for the parents. And a lot of these kindergarten parents are saying they went to West Burlington. The parents of these kindergarten kids, some of them said they went to West Burlington. I think we have 10 of these are applying for West Burlington. And I did talk to the superintendent, and he was not sure how many they will accept. There's a few siblings that they accept to keep the families together. they've indicated in the past, sometimes they wouldn't accept, and then like a month later, their numbers change, and for the most part, they've been accepted. So that's the end of that report. We just move right on to this one if you want to.
Let me say before you do that,
Yep.
before we do that, you brought up the meeting with the city, and I wanted to talk about that early. The city had talked about wanting to, that they needed the old Saunderson School site for some neighborhood development, and at the same time, we wanted to talk about some changes in the Sunnyside lease of Sunnyside Park. So the board and the council did meet in this room, a week ago, and they made a lot of progress, and I think we'll have something worked out, I hope, in the next week or so that's good for both sides and good for all the taxpayers and good for all the kids that'll use both facilities. So I just kind of wanted to update you on that. I don't have anything specific tonight, but I did want to update you on that. And now, if you're done, I'll just move to the next agenda item, is the open enrollment for 97-98 school year. Dr. Swanson, you've already done this, but I guess we could present that again, or anything else you want to say?
Any other questions, or if anybody from the public?
There might be some public discussion. There are a total of 13 open rolls out. There's one coming in. Let me see. I guess it doesn't matter where they're going, but those are the numbers. And I did want to ask, how does this affect our DSEG plan?
This will not affect it.
There are a couple of minorities that.
Yes, we have some minority students leaving, and the desegregation plan spoke to those issues, and they have been addressed in here. So everything falls within the percentages, and everyone who is applying may leave in regards to the. This will not negatively impact our desegregation plan.
Okay, and of course the recommendation is that the board approve the open enrollment. Is there any discussion from the public? Motion be in order.
Wait a minute.
Oh, I'm sorry. But you have to come to the mic, please. We can hear you, but they can't hear you at home. That's why I need you to do that.
You know, every meeting that I've been to, I've heard open enrollment all the time. But I tell you get right down to it. The open enrollment starts right here in this room. And after going to that joint meeting the other day, I tell you something, West Burlington was pretty impressive. It hurts me to see kids open and roll out, but after listening to what their board had to say and how they handled themselves, I was impressed.
Any more public discussion?
I move that we approve the, oh, I'm sorry.
I'm Mrs. Vernon Baker, 320 South 6th, and I wasn't going to say anything tonight, but I've lived in Burlington all my life, and I've attended our schools. I have 2 daughters that were raised in the schools and 2 grandsons that have done quite well and are doing well. And I think it's just fine that we have this open enrollment plan where if you want to go, anywhere you want to go, the money goes out of the district and you go. Years ago, if you wanted to change, you had to pay to go to another district. They had tuition. And I don't know if you had to pay, like when someone, like a grandchild comes into your home and you have to get guardianship. And I think a lot of people don't do that anymore. They just put them in school and we accept them. But I think any small school in a relatively wealthy community can give better things. You have smaller classes. Your children get to know each other better. You may only have less than 30 high school graduates in your high school, so you don't have the variance of people, of young people, that the public larger schools have. I've never I can see when I go up to, we were up at, I think it was Iowa City, and this beautiful West High School. Why, everywhere you go, there's a better place, it seems like, or there's a worse place. And it makes yours not seem so bad. But when you want to go here and you want what they have there, I don't know if there's a tuition that should be paid or what should be done, but I don't think you should be able to say, well, I want this from here and I want this from there. I don't know if you can do that. It's up to the board to decide, but you just stop and think about it. Any small school district, like one-room schools, look how they were. The teacher taught everybody from one kindergarten on up, and everybody got a good education. I know from experience, I volunteered at elementary schools, and I wish that some of those kids, I don't know if I could do any better with them, but I see West Burlington kids' names in the paper for problems, as well as Burlington children's names. Well, they don't have names, they just do things. But you get picked up now for being not truant, what is that? Curfews. And I think West Burlington has had curfews for some time, and Burlington just got it. And you're just across the street, so it really doesn't matter. But it's almost like some schools are private schools. And if you want to go, I think that's fine. But I think there should be something that should be worked out, that there should be, you have to have one or the other. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary.
John R. Sandell, 2803 West Avenue. I'd like to take exception to what Mr. Cleese has to say. You can give all the money in the world to a school district. You can have the best board in a school district. You can have the best buildings in a school district. It doesn't make any difference. A good school has good students. Now, if you get, I think Larry brought up the scenario the other night. If you have two-parent families, if you have good professional type parents, and you send those, and you have all those kids, and that's the group that you select, you'll probably end up with a pretty good school, whether they spend the money or not, because those kids have been brought up by the parents to learn how to learn. And those are the kids that you want in school, and those are the kids that do well. Now, I don't think this board, as much as it passes or cuts budget, is not going to make this district a good district. It's the kids that are coming into this district that make it a good school. And I'd like to think that the people out there that are open enrolling these kids learn who their teachers are and learn how their kids react to the teachers and find out that that's what makes the difference. It's not the difference here at the board as to whether it's a good school or they learn or they don't learn. That's what I had to say.
Thank you. Thanks, John. Anybody else? Anybody on the board like that?
I would, Joshua. He at the Sunday said a great thing there. Parents, and we talk about that all the time, responsibility, parent responsibility, parent responsibility. Maybe the board's going to have to put, we're doing everything we can now to get parents to take responsibility of their children. Maybe there's some other things that we can do, I don't know. But that is one of the main things, the main issue. Another issue, just like what you see tonight, and just about every other night, unless there's some great big blowed up item, is that we've become a lazy society. And most people tonight are sitting back at home and got a bunch of complaints, and I'm going to be the first one to say it. Got a bunch of complaints about this, that, and the other. And what they'll do, they'll turn the TV on, hop, skip around on the television, and then they find something they don't like. then we'll write an article in the paper. That's not good citizenship. I don't care how you look at it. Good citizenship means that you become involved personally. It means you find the time, or you put the time in your agenda, your daily life planning, that you will say to yourself, I will get up from here and go over to the school board meeting and be a concerned citizen. This place should be packed. We should have to build an additional room here to support the people in this community. But it's just a sense of, if I have to be the first one to say it, we're standing in the dark, throw a brick and hide our hand. Until parents take on the responsibility, and it is the responsibility of the parents. You can vote anybody to the school board you want to, but they cannot govern your responsibility. And that's what it boils down to. So I'm against the TV camera setting in here, but I like to see people show up. And that's the main thing. Show up, put up or shut up.
Mr. President, with reluctance, I move we approve the open enrollment report. I think that I think it is I guess the one bright spot on it is that there are more people open enrolling into the district this year. I'm inclined to think than there have been in the past, where the carryover is of course, as I understand it, the cumulative carryover of open enrollments in the past, and then with some added on this year. And I would hope with the district's effort as far as early childhood development, as far as athletic programs, as far as music programs. We have open enrollment in for string programs and that sort of thing. That I would hope that we'll see that more people continue to return to the district. But I think at this point we really have no option other than to approve the open enrollment report as presented.
Is that a motion to approve? Is there a second?
Second motion.
Moved and second, we approve this open enrollment request. Is there anybody in the audience like to say anything else? Just let me say that when I look at this, it really, at first really makes you mad, but I think you're right. I think a lot of this is our kids that started when open enrollment was new, and we're slowly making a little headway here. I think it's coming down every year. The numbers are coming down every year. And if this continues, one of these days maybe this thing will level out a little bit. So it doesn't make me as mad as it used to make me, I guess. And with that, is anybody on the board, any more discussion? Mr. Albers.
I mean, this, it's funny that we had our board forum for potential candidates, and this is something that you have to live with every day. But one of the big things that I saw was that you can look at the students who are open enrolling out, and you can say, in one of our meetings, a person came back and made it a point to address me specifically and said, a lot of people do this, Mr. Albers, simply for the sake of convenience. And to me, I guess I view, if you look on your child's education as a matter of convenience, I think you're doing a very poor job of being a parent. We have a lot of students who open enroll out simply because they live in closer proximity to outlying schools, for instance, Danville, than they do to our school that we send them to. If they wanted to continue to go to Burlington schools, they have to get on a bus and ride by West Burlington schools to come to our schools. And you can say, well, that's a lot of kids going out, until you want to look at it the other way and say there's still a lot of kids every day that get on a bus, even though they live closer to Danville schools. That bus drives by the West Burlington schools so that they can get the good education that we provide. And that's, if the parents wanted to do it for a matter of convenience, they could do it. They could save their kids 10 or 15 minutes. But, I'm not happy with the total job that we do. But as I said in the forum before, that you have to maintain, to serve on the board well, a sense of dissatisfaction. You can't be complacent. You can't be the sold-out cheerleader. You have to have some dissatisfaction for our operation to make sure that we make the changes that need to be done. And there's some good in that report there, but $1.2 million is never a good number to see going out of your district. But just have to keep trying to improve our facilities, improve our educational delivery.
Any more discussion?
I have something. I've been on this board a long time, and I guess I've come to realize that the open enrollment law is really probably the very best for parents. It really gives them a choice. I don't think it's our position to judge anyone for their decision. They go or they come or they stay based on that parent's assessment of the situation. Certainly it's a financial trend, but that is not our reason for being here. Our reason for being here is not to focus on the ins and outs, but the quality of this district. And I think there is a huge wave out there that's mounting that says that this district is just great. And it's getting better every day. And I would much rather focus on continuous quality improvement and know that we, as a board, we are doing the very best that we know how to do every time we meet. And instead of looking at it negatively. It's parents' choice. We don't judge.
I had a conversation today. Somebody at work came up and brought this up to me, and we began to talk about it. And to be honest, if I'm really honest with myself, I think the open enrollment is probably forcing this board to do things we might not have done before. I think that when you talk about class size and all-day, everyday kindergarten and things like that, this board or another board might have said there are other things we want to do if it weren't for open enrollment. I think maybe it's forcing us, maybe in that way it's forcing this board and this district
to make better
decisions,
to be a better district. Programs.
Yeah, we'd just like to see a better payoff for that
Yeah,
effort.
exactly. It'll be a lot more fun when it turns around a little bit. But I really think we're making this a better district.
Oh, yeah, and to me, it's a relativistic issue. I mean, if we could take this district and drop it, I can think of districts in the state that if we could drop this district next to some other school districts, we would have those kind of positive numbers.
That's right.
And I can say that unequivocally.
The payoff, however, is not being the biggest and the best. The payoff is graduating successful students.
That's right. Any more discussion? I'm sorry that I drugged this on that. Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next agenda item, the request by West Burlington to share high school wrestling and swimming program. This says presented by Dr. Swanson, but I'll just do this if you don't mind. The board tabled this at the last meeting, and it was tabled because we're going to have a joint meeting with the West Burlington board. So we did that, and I think that was a very good meeting that we had with West Burlington. I think we accomplished some things. But in order for this to move along, we need a motion from the board to consider this issue because it's tabled right now. So
Oh, okay.
somebody just needs to make a motion to consider. We'll get a second, and we'll vote on that, and then it'll be on the table, and we can get going.
Well, I would move that we take up this issue of the sharing program for wrestling and swimming with the West Burlington School District.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we put this issue back on the discussion at this moment. Is there any more discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the issue before us is the request to share with West Burlington wrestling and swimming. I guess it's time for some public discussion. Please come up and give your name and go from there.
Mike Richard, 1029 Willow Avenue. A couple of things. First of all, I think we probably have two very good school districts in West Burlington and Burlington, and I think a lot of the open enrollment issue is a matter of preference. I know personally, comparing it to living in a community, I would feel very uncomfortable living in Chicago or New York. Burlington's about as big as I'd want to be, and I think to a lot of people that's all the difference there is. As small is better to some, and to others larger is better. I think both school districts have a lot to offer, and I think open enrollment, like Mr. Courtney mentioned, competition is probably good because I think it forces school districts to make decisions to make their school systems better. But I also think open enrollment and sharing are two completely different topics, and I think we get in competition a little bit, with the open enrollment versus the sharing program. But the number of shared programs in Iowa in all sports, and again, you got a handout from Mr. Elmore a couple months back, but in all sports there were 216 shared programs in all, and that involved 468 schools in the state of Iowa. Now, apparently it's working with them, and either they're seeing something that we're not, or maybe we're seeing something that they're not. But it appears to be working, and it's not always the small schools sharing with other small schools. Iowa City High, for example, shares with Lone Tree and West Branch, and I would bet they probably lose some students to those two schools because they're in close proximity and they're smaller school system, just like Burlington and West Burlington. In the MAC conference, there's 8 school systems in the MAC conference that are involved in sharing programs. Davenport Central, North, and West all share with Assumption, and again, I'm sure they lose some schools to open enrollment to a private school like Davenport Assumption, yet they're
Well, there's no
they're
open
sharing.
enrollment to a private school. But,
Pardon?
excuse me, you can't open enroll to a private school, so it doesn't.
Okay, well, whether it's open enrollment, I would venture to say they probably lose some people from their
Yeah, parochial
from their
schools
boundaries.
might just have to go there
Okay,
and pay the tuition to go.
Okay. But opening or sharing programs opens the door to many kids who would not otherwise have these opportunities to participate, and these are great opportunities for the kids. They're not being, in these schools that are sharing, those kids aren't being told, to leave your home school and open enroll to ours. The message is we're willing to let you use our programs for a minimal fee or a minimal compensation, since you'd otherwise not be able to have this experience. And it seems like we're telling, or maybe sending a message to the Burlington kids, don't open enroll over to West Burlington for whatever your reasons are, but we're telling West Burlington, if you want to come here, we want you to open enroll out. And I think things can be worked out with both school systems being good systems and being competitive with this open enrollment policy, but we can also share programs, I would think. And again, I point to those numbers, 468 schools in the state that are already sharing. Those of us that are closest to the programs, wrestling and swimming, our athletic director is in favor of it, our coaches are in favor of it, our parents are in favor of it, and our athletes are in favor of sharing. So, I ask you to, please consider that. And again, I'd like to point out, to everyone here that it's not the kids that are open enrolling out of Burlington that are asking to come back into the system. I don't know of one kid that's open enrolled out of Burlington that now wants to come back and wrestle or swim. So again, that's two different groups of kids. Looking at it from a monetary standpoint, if we're losing $1.2 million or whatever due to open enrollment out, I think if we tell these West Burlington students, we want you to open enroll over here, I'm not sure that we would get much of a return, maybe zero if we would share. And again, this would be minimal, but we're looking at some compensation for using our wrestling program and our swimming program. And I guess I just ask you too, as you vote on this, proposal, just maybe to make it a little bit more personal, Chad and Chris, why don't you stand up just a second? I mean, these are two of the kids, and I'm sure there's more, but these are two of the kids that would like, just asking, can we please come over and use your program? We like the community we're in, we like the school district we're in. Our school system doesn't offer wrestling, doesn't offer swimming. It's a great sport that we'd like to participate in. We're willing to pay for it. Please let us come in. So.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
I would ask you to, we're not covering a lot of new ground here, so I would ask you to kind of keep it
I'll be.
Keep it fair.
The swim coaches are always brief.
You gotta come up and get
You know,
a
there's
breath.
so many, there's so many notes that's been out of joint with this issue. The only guy I can see benefit from this whole discussion is gonna be Dean Lyons. He's gonna straighten noses for about 3 years after this discussion. One in my situation, for a single coach, our numbers and finances, we're in pretty good shape, but we could always use more athletes. And 5 of the schools we compete against in girls swimming and boys swimming have the shared program. So, you know, that ground has been covered before. And I guess the statement I made to Mrs. Boyd after the last meeting was that, you know, we're worried about open enrollment, and maybe I go a step further, is that I'm a little bit more concerned about our communities and our school systems, is the moving out to Danville, West Minneapolis, and to the Illinois school systems, more so than open enrollment at this stage of the game. And I guess the next statement I'd like to make, and I'll just end it with this, is at what point will open enrollment not be an issue in sharing? And that's really all I have to say about the issue.
Thanks. Let me remind you to give your name and address. I kind of let that go a couple times, I think. So.
Bob Hiller, 4643 Summer, Burlington. I want to bring a little bit different twist to the situation and talk a little bit from a business perspective. One thing that we've heard some very positive comments tonight here about, from everybody that really has kind of been on the other side of that when we talk open enrollment, dollars and cents and economics. But we've also said that we can see the positive, and maybe as we keep working at it, we'll see that start to balance itself out. I've made this comment before that the way our children were taught and the way the business person was and the professional was and the average worker was much different 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and even today. And going to be considerably different 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and 15 years out. You've already made changes. It's forcing us to make some decisions, which none of us like change. And I'm sure the majority of us have all made up our minds where we're going with the sharing process with wrestling and swimming. But I think we've got to look at it much bigger than wrestling and swimming and open enrollment. We've got to look at all the changes you're already making at all-day kindergarten, at talking about possibly year-round school. We're starting to minimize or compress the size of the classrooms. Well, it's the same way. There's a tremendous amount of business out there that also were very much adversaries in the past, that actually bring new product to the forefront as a team, as a partner, but yet are complete competitors on another hand. The school system's got to look at that in the same manner. We've got to say, wait a minute, this is for all students. As Gail said, we've got to make sure that we are successfully graduating all students at every level. Business has continued to say they've got to deliver the most quality product that they possibly can. And how have they done that? They've actually taken competitors and came together. And that's really what we're talking about here, as competitors in different districts, of coming together and trying to put our differences aside a little bit and work together for the ultimate what we're after. And that is to really deliver a quality system for the students. So business does relate to it the same way as the school system does. And we're able to put our differences aside, come together, and then walk away and still be competitors at one another. And I think West Burlington, Burlington, Notre Dame, et cetera, can continue to do that. So I think we've got to look beyond wrestling and swimming. We know that we also talked at the joint meeting of West Burlington, Burlington about future programs. It's very easy to talk about, let's talk about it when the new ones come up, but let's don't deal with the ones that exist. Because that way we don't have to address some of the other things. Well, I think we do have to go upstream and address some of that, take care of some of that, show that we can be bigger than that and step out of our character a little bit. And especially as we move forward and share a lot of the technology programs, the career centers, the school to work, et cetera, right down the line, we're all going to benefit as a whole. So when you get ready to think about the swimming and the wrestling, put it into the big picture as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Would someone else like to come up and address this? Sure.
You want just my name?
Your address, too.
Oh, Debbie Johnson, 1206 West Mount Pleasant.
Are you a West Burlington resident?
Yes. Am I not allowed to speak? Oh.
No, yeah, you can speak. I just wanted to know where you're from.
Okay.
Normally, out-of-district people aren't, but this issue is crossing both lines, so I'm just allowing people to speak.
Okay. Well, I realized that there was a petition or whatever that was passed around about this, but I don't see all those people that signed that petition that are so against this here, you know, and there's people here that have been to every morning. I mean, if you're concerned about it, you know, I just feel that you should be here. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? I don't have a motion. We need a motion to proceed on this thing.
You
The
probably
motion
have the old motion.
Well, I don't think
Or
there was
did-
ever made a
there was
motion
never
on
a
that,
motion.
on that old one. We just spoke about it, but we didn't make a motion. So the motion that would be in order would be a motion to,
Act on the request.
a motion to share the swimming and wrestling program with West Burlington would be a correct motion.
Well, I think some board discussion might help in seeing if there's a motion that will cover this.
What was that, Joe?
I said, I think we might need some board discussion before we move to a motion, before we know what the motion's going to be.
I don't understand where you're going.
Well, if we're going to make a request for a sharing, perhaps we don't know what the objections or the possible contention items could be on here on the board. It might do us good to discuss it amongst ourselves to see if the level of motion we want to make tonight.
I don't see how we can do that. I assumed that since we talked about this before, we didn't have a motion.
You can make a positive motion, and when you vote, you can vote it down if that's what you want to do to get the conversation going.
You can make a motion to either do it or not do it, well, actually,
vote it
the
up or
best
down.
way would be to make a motion to do it, as you say, a positive motion, and then vote it up or down.
And-
Is that,
And can debate it at that time, correct?
you always can debate a motion.
Really, you
I let it
can't.
get
Well, I'm
carried
sure we can
away.
debate it and
Proper
amend it, but sure. It's
What's
just
that, Joe?
I'm sure we can, I guess, well, the one concern is that, I guess I'm just looking for a little board direction. First of all, do we want to have the two of these together? I mean, there are two separate, one's for wrestling, one's for swimming.
Well, I don't know if it has to be that hard. Usually when we do these, we talk about a sharing program with another school, and in this case, we're talking about wrestling and swimming. I don't think it has to be that hard.
Okay.
I think a proper motion would be to share wrestling and swimming with West Burlington.
I make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded that we share wrestling and swimming with West Burlington. Is there any board discussion on that?
Before the board, we also have a shared agreement for swimming with Mount Pleasant, and that would not be affected by this.
Is that agreement, since you brought that up, is that agreement, is this the last year of that, Dr. Swanson? That was a grandfather?
According to the last motion, or that agreement was, we have you'll be a senior, right, Don? And you had directed us to, well, you had approved that agreement with Mount Pleasant, and then after he graduated, of course, if they would have another person, they could always request. But that was the direction at that time.
Did he graduate this year?
He will be a senior, this incoming senior.
So he's got 1 year left, and if I remember that right, we grandfathered him only for his, until he graduated.
There were two tennis, or one
Yeah,
tennis player
yeah.
also, you grandfathered
Right.
that group
But
together.
she graduated, didn't she, that girl?
Out 2 years.
Yeah, so the only sharing we have with them is the one individual now.
Right. But this would not affect.
This doesn't affect.
This would not affect. It could be Mount Pleasant, Burlington, Westport.
Mr. Sparks, go ahead.
Man, when was this?
When did the Mount Pleasant thing?
Yeah, before I came on the board.
Yes.
It was about 3 years ago. It might have been my first year on the board.
Yeah.
They came to us, and we this is off the subject, but let me explain this a second. They came to the board, and Lauren Gracie was the president at that time. They came to the board and wanted to extend the sharing agreement. At that time, there was a lot of board discussion, and the board decided not to share with Mount Pleasant. And that's what they did. Then the following meeting, those kids came here and said, look, we're in the middle of this thing. We'd like to finish out our swimming and tennis careers, and because we're right in the middle of it. And the board changed their mind and voted to allow those particular individuals by name to be grandfathered into that. So it's about over. It's running out now.
I guess my question is that, what is actually saying? We have done it in the past.
Oh, sure. It was done, but the board decision at that time was that they wanted to grandfather that and not do it anymore. That was a different board, but I'm just telling you how that.
Okay, but that was the previous decision was to do it and not do it anymore. But that's not doing it anymore is just to me is just a legitimate excuse. The thing about it is, if you're going to do something, when you get your foot wet, you know, in something like that, I was unaware of it, of the share agreement. I'm just going to tell you how I feel now. And the thing about it is that you start something, you know, what's good for the gander is good for the goose. Is what I'm saying. Is that you got something started back over here once. You have shared with somebody.
Sure.
That's out there.
Sure.
And people are aware of that fact, aware that you have done that, and that it's been grandfathered in, okay? Now we, you know, some of us have, and I'm not going to sit here, but some of us have mixed ideas about it now. And some of you know, and we know that. But that's not legitimate to me. You can have mixed ideas you want to, but the thing I'm looking at is that you have done it in the past.
Well, the Mount Pleasant thing actually has.
So what can we do? I look, what can we
Well,
do?
each sharing agreement stands on its own merits.
I understand what you're saying, but I'm still saying is that, you know, you're going to do right about something. You try your best to do those things which are right. I was unaware of it.
Al, I think there was considerable discussion at the time, and I don't know if the board was in, and I don't recall now whether it was unanimous or not unanimous. There was also some concern that basically at the time this had, as I recall, that this had already been basically signed off on before it was presented to the board. So the board felt that we were in a position, because I was on that board, where out of basically compassion with the children that were already participating in the program, and two out of representations that had already been made between the districts, that we went along with what is now one student finishing the high school career. But this was over considerable concern on the part of several board members that we even did that. And I don't, if that is in any way a precedent for this, I think it's a precedent that really the board had taken a position as far as sharing goes, and did not intend to proceed with sharing on that basis.
Well, that's why you
those
vote on
programs.
each one. That's why you
Right.
have to vote on each time. You don't, it's not precedent anything. Any more discussion? Okay.
Well, you made the motion, so actually you have first right to jump in.
Well, this has been a really difficult topic for me, because I kind of go back and forth about what's really the right thing to do. In my heart, I would really like this community to pull together and do what's best for kids across the board. The other side of that is that we're elected by those voters out there that, and our sole responsibility is to take care of the Burlington Community School District and provide the best programs for it. I think about a school district of 5,200 and wonder why the wrestling program is having difficulty keeping enough students in it. Why on its own isn't it a growing sport? Same way about swimming, although it has, it seems to keep pretty solid numbers. We have
the same number of kids out. I've been here for 20
Mike,
years.
I can't start this.
Well, I know, but
I just can't start it. If you want to come to the mic and speak when Gail's done, you can do that, but we can't have a debate back and forth. Go ahead.
So I think we've worked so hard on Burlington's programs, and if you keep your vision in line that we are going to provide the best programs for kids in this district, then I think my position is that we say no to the sharing agreement. That doesn't mean that I want to close the door on West Burlington at all, because I think we have to continue these discussions and continue working together. But for right now, I think our focus has to be the students within this district, and I will vote no.
Joe.
Well, I think it's been all of 3 months since we've had such an issue that's drawn such a debate as far as people have had a very definite opinion about this one that I've come in contact with. And so how do I reflect those two, in service of the board, how do I reflect those two viewpoints that I've gotten quite clearly from good friends of mine and from people I have never met before? In concurrence with Gail, I kind of say that it's easy for me to just write this off and say I only want to care about Burlington kids, and in one respect I think we could have a sharing program and we could still be concentrating on Burlington kids. We've got programs that we no longer have because of lack of participation and lack of funding, and it was my belief that if we could identify another element of participation and funding, then we could reinstate those programs. And we don't have all the programs, and there's some avenue that we can obtain from West Burlington or from Danville or from Mediapolis or from anybody. But we already do have sharing agreements. I do believe they can bring their buses out here, and we work on them for them. We do share other resources and abilities. And a lot of people that had comments that there was no way that we should even entertain this idea was, first of all, A, because you're only supposed to take care of Burlington kids. Okay, that's hard to argue against. But the other one was the open enrollment issue. For all the money that they get from us, there's no way we should have this kind of sharing agreement. And first of all, open enrollment is not a West Burlington problem. It's not a West Burlington issue. It's a Burlington issue. It's a Burlington problem. And we've just had the discussion on the value of that and the merits of that. But to me, if this was no open enrollment and we had District X and District Y and we had this kind of an issue, we'd already have the sharing agreement done, signed, and sealed. And if it's a matter of specifics, if we need to find out how much is West Burlington willing to pay for these students to come in, it's like West Burlington Water. They get their water from Burlington. We had a sharing agreement there between two civic governments, and they pay a charge and a surcharge. So if it's a matter of money, then we can negotiate that. It's an opportunity that maybe we should look into. And I just feel that this can't be about open enrollment. And for all those people who gave me their comments based on open enrollment, this is about some other issue that I don't think that we can address by denying them an opportunity to wrestle. I don't want to take it out on the fact that 282 students are in West Burlington and Danville and Mediapolis schools. I don't want to take that out on 14 and 15-year-old children. That's just retribution.
Okay, any other board member?
Just a couple of comments. I think obviously this issue has been an emotional issue for many people. It's been an emotional issue for me, and I would not be the first to deny that. But I think the basic issues are first, I think we owe our primary responsibility as this board to the children of our district. And I think we have our voters have required that we build these programs. Our voters have, I think, generally supported these programs over the years. And I think that these are for the benefit of the children within the district. And although we say, well, that this isn't really competitive among the children, but obviously, I think in any program, if you have people of different abilities and you end up with one person being able to compete who has a better ability than the child within our district, then I think we as a board aren't being, from policy point of view, aren't being fair in supporting the children within our district and the taxpayers that have made that program viable. The second thing is that open enrollment for its strengths and weaknesses does give, if this is an issue, if this is a program that a particular student or a particular family feels important, they can open enroll in the district and have all of the benefits that program will give them. And it's a two-way street. They can both go to West Burlington. They can come from West Burlington into our district. I guess I also feel the real concern here, and sometimes it takes this sort of an issue to bring that issue to the fore, that the concern that a district of our size is not developing the competitive vigor at these various levels that would lead up to varsity competition. And I think that certainly as a result of this, the board should take a look at that and see what we can do to strengthen these programs. And I guess I also feel that there are many areas of discussion with not only the West Burlington district, but any other school districts and any other districts that are any other people that are concerned with bona fidely concerned with the education of our children, because I think we're all concerned about those things, and this is an area that should be kept open for discussion. But for the reasons said and the reasons that I've indicated before, I cannot vote for this sharing agreement, or for that matter with the Mount Pleasant sharing agreement, or any other. There's another vehicle available for the use of these facilities within our district, and it's not this agreement.
I think Gail very eloquently stated my thoughts. And in answer to the open enrollment conflict question involved with this, I'm not even sure that open enrollment should even be involved in the decision. I know it is, but maybe it shouldn't even be involved with it. I think what we need to do, as Gail says and as Steve says, that our primary concern are Burlington and Burlington students, and we have to answer to our voters, to our taxpayers, to say that we're doing the best we can and to provide programs for our students in Burlington.
Yes, sir.
This is the way I'm going to put it. And this is, I listen to everybody, and it's good. But due to the small amount of time, I think it's the smallest amount of time that's been spent between the two school boards in discussing about the items that impact our youth and how obstacles can be removed to accommodate it and encourage them to higher education. I think it is a fact that both districts, school boards, local community need to sort of look beyond our faults, whatever they may be. I don't know what a lot of them are, and see the real needs of our children. Therefore, I say that the need is very evident, and it's very real, and we all know that. It's very real. The issues are real. So I will not, I will vote no until, for a very definite reason. That's until the two school board districts can come together and discuss these issues in more depth. Maybe we're serious about it, and we're serious about our children, education, as we sit here and vocally said. Maybe the school boards can come together and create a focus team to find out, to search out and find out how can we get to the real root of this problem. It's not good. It's not healthy. At the root of the problem, we need a focus team to get out there and get all the information they can, and to find out how can these two districts come together and either there a possibility to share different programs for our children, or should we consolidate or whatever. Consolidation is not a bad word. It's a good word. It's a healthy word. It's a word of strength. It's a word of unity. That means you're together. You stand as one for the children. It's not a bad word. I mean, we shouldn't look at it as a bad word. But I do not believe in my heart that this board, Burlington, and school board in West Burlington have spent enough time discussing the issue in depth that when we come forward with a program, it won't be detrimental to our young people. I hate to start something, and all of a sudden, we find it's detrimental to our young people. For instance, the share program with Mount Pleasant, and these little burst of items, but we're going to do it this time, but we ain't going to do it no more. You can't have that. You just can't play games with young people. And I call it game playing. I don't care what nobody else calls it. But when you tag issues like that with privileges, you're going to grant a young person or a young person something, and then on the other hand, you're going to say, we ain't going to grant to other people that, the other young people that. That's not good business. It's not a healthy thing for young people. So we need to get it in depth. We need to get with other school boards. We need to find out. We need to discuss this in a more wider range. We need to get a depth of the problem. We need to make an attempt to solve the issue. And I'm going to hold up on my vote until that issue is solved. I pledge my allegiance to this board that I'll do everything possible that this board would get with West Burlington board and stop this playing with our young people's livelihood. I don't appreciate it.
Mike, you wanted to say a few brief words?
Yeah, just a couple things. First of all, I don't care whether I've got 10 kids out for wrestling or 1,000. That's not what the sharing agreement, in my opinion, was for. It's not to get our numbers up. If we got one kid in West Burlington that has no place to go, I say, welcome into our program. Secondly, just in defense of my program, because I take offense at, finger pointing at numbers. I've been here for 20 years, 19 years in coaching, and we've had prosperous years and we've had lean years. And last year, I think Don and I both finished the year with about 20 kids. Sure, we would like to have had more kids out. Girls basketball, varsity basketball, did not have very many girls try out. The varsity football numbers were low last year. So just in defense of my own program in that aspect, the numbers were low in quite a few different areas last year. And wrestling is probably one of the most physically and mentally demanding sports there is. There's a lot of kids that cannot stand to get out there and put themselves on the line one-on-one in front of an auditorium full of people. We lose people, kids to that. But just, in defense of my program, we've been up, we've been down, and but the sharing thing was not that wasn't the intent. Was to get our numbers up. The intent was to give these kids an opportunity to go someplace to wrestle. So,
thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone on the board? The motion before us is to allow or to begin a sharing program concerning wrestling and swimming with West Burlington. A yes vote would be to do that, a no vote would be to not do that. Joe, did you?
Yeah, I did want to jump in there. It's the problem that we have is that we have an August 1st deadline, so we only have a limited time. I think there's a way to make this a win-win situation. If it's a matter of charge and a surcharge basis, if it's a matter of the surcharge money coming in to help fund an extra coach for the swimming, that would help all of the wrestlers or all of the swimmers. That's something that we can't really address here, and that's a problem that we have. But I think there has got to be a way, first of all, to make this a win-win, a win for our students that we are looking out for. That you could maybe have, if you had enough students that came in, that you could have another assistant coach to work with those students. That could only make this a better swim team for the Burlington kids and a better wrestling team for the Burlington kids. And I know that by negotiation, I know there has got to be a way to make this a win-win. This is not a we lose situation. It doesn't have to be, and I wouldn't stand for that in the first place. But what are we going to teach the community? I think the problem is that the wrestlers, they have their wrestling club, and so they wrestle together. Burlington, West Burlington, Danville, Morning Sun, Mediapolis, and they, as our constituents, probably can't understand why we can't work together. And that's a problem that the business community has asked us before. And I'm not looking to sell the farm. I'm not looking to have it all of a sudden where I've got 11 kids in an AP calculus class, bring in 4 more and ruin the atmosphere that I've got. Wrestling is a very objective sport. I've done it. It's a lot of fun. But it's a very objective sport. The coach doesn't decide that, well, I like you better and you've been working harder in practice. You've got to go out there and wrestle and win. And if that provides more challenge for our Burlington students, what better service can we provide them? If it makes a swimmer work harder to make sure that they get their spot on the team, we've just provided them a better education. And if we did it and also we provided them for an extra assistant coach for more coaching capability, then that's what we're here for. And we can make this a win-win. We can't get into the details tonight. That's our problem. But I just think there is a way to make this a win-win for our students. And we have to, I regret that we have to spend any time, but in some respects, when we talk about West Burlington, we are talking about Burlington. And you're right, the ultimate sharing program is consolidation. And ask the West Burlington and Burlington Chamber of Commerce. That seems to have worked out quite well. But we're not going to solve that problem tonight either. And whatever we do with West Burlington in the future, this isn't going to live or die by this. But it's not a bad place to start as far as I'm concerned. And I know through negotiation, this can be a win-win. It can be a win for our students. It can be a win for our district. The matter is the details. And I don't have the answers for those, but I know it can be done.
Well, because of the August 1st deadline, we need to vote tonight. So, as I said before, the motion on the floor is the sharing agreement between West Burlington and Burlington for wrestling and swimming. A yes vote would be to share, and no vote would be not to share. Would you please poll the board?
Hoth?
No.
Sparks?
No.
Braze?
Aye.
Boyd?
No.
Courtney?
No.
Garwood?
No.
Failed 5-1.
All right, that motion failed, 5-1. The next agenda items, the out-of-school activities presented by Superintendent Thorne.
Every so often we bring to you these types of requests. The Pathfinder Yearbook teacher sponsor, Mrs. Hartman, and the teachers committee of students will be traveling to Marceline, Missouri. July 30th is the date that we have. I don't know if we caught that. I'll start over.
Yeah, you probably better.
On July 30th, the BHS publication students would like to travel to Marceline, Missouri. This is the plant where the yearbook is published. It would take a school bus, and the publication account will cover the expense.